Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. We are in the lower theater. It is 6:03 p.m. Technical difficulties get started, but we have it straightened out. There is a Zoom link on the agenda that can be accessed through rockbf.org. There will be an executive session tonight for a short matter. There will be no decision made tonight. Discussion only. That being said, I'll call this meeting to order. First order of business is to approve the minutes of April 19th, 2022. They're in your packet. Take a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes of April 19th.
For a second.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the minutes of April 19th, 2022. For the corrections, additions, deletions, omissions. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Additions to the agenda for routine maintenance, administrative matters, and/or pressing matters that will require ratification at future meeting. There is one. We have an addition to the liquor licenses, petrol, gas, growth. That's the 7-Eleven. Site is requesting a second class. So we'll get to them and add them to the group. Anyone else have the additions?
It's on the addition.
Or? Moving right along, public comment on items not on the agenda, 3 minutes per person. See no one in public here. Anyone on the screen? Nope, guess not. All right, let's go to the manager's report.
All right, thank you, Peter. A couple things. We're still working out on Pleasant Valley Road, trying to get everything ready for early season paving. So we don't have a confirmed date yet for our milling. As soon as we get that, we'll try to post, so we'll give people a heads up. We have a couple more culverts to finish and a few other items along there, and then they'll be ready for milling and then ultimately paving for that. That's the major portion of our paving projects for this summer. We're still waiting to hear back from the state. As a follow-up, if you remember, we applied for the paving grant money under the structures grant from the state transportation department. We're still waiting to hear back from them on the status of that application. So as soon as we hear something, I'll certainly pass that on to the board as well. Other projects, the bridge project is still moving along. We still have a street light out on our portion of the arch bridge that is being researched and worked on. A little bit of difficulty trying to get the Vermont and New Hampshire DOTs to coordinate who did what and where. We did find some wiring that looks like it was done but not connected to the new light that's sitting there. So we're trying to get all that coordinated so ultimately that light on our portion of the bridge can be powered on. We have a few minor items to clean up, and then ultimately I think they'll be off, hopefully out of the area there before we get into some of the other larger summer activities that it might impact. So I think they'll be gone hopefully before that starts to happen. So we'll see. At the moment, I know we also scheduled, I'm not sure if maybe Elijah is going to mention something, if there's a downtown cleanup scheduled where you're going to bring that up. So I'll hold off on some of the other projects that are happening and let him bring those up and update the board as well. So that's it for now.
Rick.
Any word on the FEMA money?
We had a follow-up conversation with the state and the FEMA Region 1 people about the benefit cost analysis to do improvements to the Hyde Hill drainage. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's not going to meet any of the one-to-one. They want a one-to-one criteria on that for the Section 406, which is the easiest program. So we're going to work with the state on the other 2 programs that are available under the disaster declaration, which is a little more involved, requires us to do some drainage work We have the 1992 CT Molly study, which looked at the entire drainage area up there and made some recommendations for additional drainage that, quite frankly, we never implemented. So those need to be updated. And I think if we took the updated engineering and made some drainage improvements, you might see those downstream impacts from the bigger storms significantly lessened, so that we don't have that immediate flash flooding, and then it overtops the structure down below, and then we have, you know, downstream flooding in the village. So we're working on that program. That was holding up our reimbursements for all of our projects. So we had that phone call about a week ago now. So I'm hopeful that everything now should go through with all the other projects being submitted. And you know, hopefully then it will all be here before the end of June, so when we're talking about year end, we can make sure that we're all on the same page with money that's already been expended, what we have coming back, and where we stand. So, yeah.
Questions?
Question about the, the Pleasant Valley Road and 121. Do we think there's going to be a lot of crossover on the projects there in the timing?
No, we should be out of Pleasant Valley early, because I think they're looking to pave in June. So,
Great.
yeah, we should be out of there before the significant work's underway on that other project.
Great.
Anything else?
Just a question about Green Up. What's the story with tires this year?
Well, a couple things. We've talked about, we're not going to put a container for tires out in the Saxons River, but we will accept tires if people bring them to the recycling center on Green Up Day. And we'll see how that goes. And
The
then
recycling center.
we're at the recycling center, and then we'll sort of reevaluate as we go. It is amazing how many of these tires seem to come out of a garage with no mud or no, you know, they seem like they've been in storage.
Well, there are plenty on the side of the road, but still.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're
So,
really checking, so,
but
We
yeah,
need to have some mud before we accept it.
yeah.
it's
You
becoming
can tell.
a major expense item in our recycling center budget. You know, I think we get $1,800 from the state, and it's costing us anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000 in disposal. So it doesn't quite add up.
So volunteers come up and pull the tires up out of the river or whatever. What are they supposed to do with them? They have to bring them to the recycling, or can they leave them there by the fire station in Saxons River? And they
I prefer that they bring them to the recycling center, because what we've been finding is we're just getting a huge just dump of tires.
if you left the container there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're hoping that it's a little more controlled if people bring them to the recycling center. And we'll see how it goes, like I said. That's an item we'll have to keep an eye on.
Okay, we're set there. Let's go down to the agenda. And the first item is the meeting of liquor commissioners. We will need a motion for the Saxon River Village Market, second-class license, Stanch's Place for a second-class license, and Petrogras Group, second class, that's 7-Eleven. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the Saxon River Village Market, Stanch's Place, and Petrogras Group for a second-class license. All those in favor would say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. And let's move down as we're signing licenses here. Municipal entertainment regulation review.
Thanks. So there's a memo in your packet from Chuck and a little bit of history. So we had this request from the arcade to do a renewal on their, basically their entertainment permit. And the more we looked into it, the more it seemed to be a little bit sort of out of the ordinary. So maybe with that as a little bit of background, maybe Chuck, you want to jump in and maybe just work off of where you were on the memo, and we'll go from there.
I think the first action for the select board to consider is just approving Jim O'Brien's application. Technically, the regulation, the ordinance is in effect, and he applies. He's been doing it since the 80s. Larger, bigger picture, we have to see if this regulation is in our interest. We do permit a fair amount of stuff that happens. It's not so much what you do, it's where you do it. It's been our interest. So if you happen to do it on a public sidewalk, a public, park, or a municipal parking lot or something like that, there are regulations in place that allow us to have a say in how those activities take place. This is a little different, as you can read it. Dates back to, it started in 72, revised in 86. And it reflects an earlier era where, entertainment and other social events were regulated. I think for a lot of us, some of us probably have never seen this. It's certainly not a regulation the staff use often.
Main Street Arts apparently forgot, Scott Reese sent us that letter.
Right.
So as a theater, for not movies, but for just, dramatic productions, we would be under that.
I don't want to, the last time I saw it, there's a separate lease agreement. You're using the town hall, if that's your reference.
No, this is for the Saxon River facility, 35 Main Street.
So yes, that would apply for you if you were operating inside that building.
Anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, in conjunction with that, we do have an application request for Jim's Arcade application here. There is a suggested motion if someone wants to make it. Seeing there's no volunteers, I guess I'll read it. I move we instruct the staff to update the municipal entertainment regulations and present the select board with a revised draft for review and approval.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to request and instruct the staff to update municipal entertainment regulations and present the select board with a revised draft for review and approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Second motion is move that we approve the theater and entertainment application from Jim's Arcade and request staff issue a new operating license that goes into effect on June 1st, 2022. There is a copy in your file, in your packet. Application is on the backside of what I just read. We are a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the theater and entertainment application from Jim's Arcade and request staff issue a new operating license that goes into effect on June 1st, 2022. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, Rockingham Town Plan Review and Update. There is a huge packet, not huge, but a interesting reading in your packet. I haven't completed it yet. I got through about 12 pages before I quit, but it's interesting reading. A little wordy, but.
Well, it's dense and it's somewhat detailed for a reason, and I think part of it is because all of these larger land use decisions really, it helps you when you have these, I guess, we're somewhat of a developed community, but there's always going to be new development, infill development, changes in economy and other types of activities. And so what this does is help us hopefully keep relevant as conditions change. And I know that the planning board and Chuck and Deb working through the planning board have been intimately involved in a lot of the detail involved in here. So maybe this would be a good jumping off point for them to sort of bring the select board up to speed on where things are and where we're headed.
All right, so, first off, I'd like to thank Bonnie North for starting us on the tour. We did, what, 3 and 3 years ago at least, and since COVID kind of put a slow crawl on everything we had to do. But we found ways around it using Zoom and so on and so forth to participate and find, eventually, and got ourselves moving. We're about 80% in, or completed, so with about another 20%, polishing of chapters that appear to be complete, but may not be, once we have more time to settle in on what we set for language, and that we've gone over multiple times, but then we other things. ARPA is one of those things. We have submitted to all of the planning commissioners the ARPA plans and the last derivation from the Camoin people with after our last April 13th meeting, where we had input from the community, and they made decisions about what seemed to be the strongest things that need to be done in many areas. Those projects, based upon the grading and so on and so forth, are something that the planning commission can use to strengthen the language in each of the chapters that they pertain to. And in so doing, allow us to have an easier access to funding and so on and so forth, because we hit all the points. And especially in the projects and areas that we want the community's input in order to move forward, we now need to make sure that it hits our town plan and that we have done the best with the language that we can to get that money. I was just started with, we took the plan and flipped it on its head, and you're saying that it's lengthy, but technically it's smaller and it's more brief and condensed than it was in previous iterations. We took the plan and flipped it over, so anyone, a citizen or anyone, can read it and see where we're headed immediately, because the things we want to maintain and improve and evolve are at the top of the chapters. It makes it easier to see where we want to be and what we're trying to get to. Our actions and steps and so on and so forth, if you wanted to call them that, are at the beginning. All the detail and the beautiful history of the community and everything is in each of the chapters, but it's after those actions that allows everyone to easily see where we're heading, and taking into account the changes that have happened in our community and making sure that everything we are doing fits where we really are. So it's been a lot of work. The commissioners have dug deep, and we still have, like I said, 20% more to do. The energy chapter you'll probably see is the largest and densest reading there is, but there's a lot of technical pieces that need to be in there. So it is slightly smaller overall, but there's dense reading, but we want to make sure that it's an active plan with information at the top that makes it easy to see what you want to get into. If that's where you want to be and you want to develop something here, then you read the rest of the chapter. All the detail is in there. But this way, we see it easily and we can dive in. We want to make sure that it's not going to be a plan that sits on the shelf or that only Gary looks at, but that everyone can. The select board, the trustees of the village, those pieces all fit. Saxon's River, all of that works. We want to make sure that everyone uses it. And actually, when they look at plans, if they have things they want to do, make sure where it fits in the town plan and that it is the direction we're expecting to head. That's an overview.
Yeah,
Chuck
this
might
is
have some
great.
more detail.
The only 2 or 3 things I'll add, thank you, Rick, for making this suggestion. If I understand it correctly, what traditionally happens is the select board is just given a document, says, hey, we've had our public hearings, we've done our work, here's your plan. And it can be overwhelming. You all have chosen to kind of do this process incrementally. I believe this will be one of a couple of meetings where we will come back with additional chapters and receive your input. I've already been able to work with a few of you individually. You come to me either marked up the plan, or you say, I have local comments, now show me how those concerns are being addressed in the plan. I can do any and all of the above, however you guys want to get your input heard. Ideally, this vision that you have, I think, is going to work the best, because for you to incorporate this into your decision-making, into your deliberations, if you feel like you've had an influence over the plan, whatever input we receive tonight, and as well as the remainder of this week, next week, we're going to bring it back, Deb and I, to the planning commission, say this is from the select board, what's integrated into the plan, and go on. And then probably come back here in 2 or 3 months.
So initially, do you have any input for us? Have you had a chance to absorb enough of it in order to ask some questions?
So we can send in comments, I assume,
Yes.
on these things. 'Cause I have some questions on density, housing density and things like that. I mean, when you drive around town, you see 14 cars parked all over everybody's lawn and sidewalks and everything else. That can't go on. That detracts from the whole area when we see that going on. And perfect examples on Saxon River where that guy's running the garage next to the market.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that totally, we assume he's running garage there, I can't.
Oh, the house next door to the Sackler
Yeah,
Market?
yeah.
Yeah, and that's
So-
been going on for years.
You know, and even in Bellows Falls, when you drive through Bellows Falls, they're just, you know, they're just parking on the sidewalk.
Congestion.
Sidewalk, I mean, when I came into town today, there was a pickup truck parked up here where the Wild Goose Players is going, and it's parked on the sidewalk with the doors open. People gotta walk out in the road, get around that. It's dangerous right there where that area is. That shouldn't be allowed to go on. But, I got a lot of other questions, but I'll bring them up. I'll send in a note right up on it.
Thank you, Peter.
So, but yeah, it's pretty interesting reading, I'll say that. And, so, but anyway, anyone else have any comments?
I want to thank you for being receptive to the arts, the contribution the arts make to this community, do and will make. And it's just a wonderful part of Bellows Falls, Rockingham, Saxon River. And to acknowledge it in the town plan paves the way for exactly what Deb says. We want to apply for grants. These individual organizations can see it's part of the town plan. That reinforces our case. So speaking for Main Street Arts and the Wild Goose Players, or the groups I'm associated with, I really wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys do with that chapter. I think it's a very important one. I got a question on page 11. At least I had a question when I read this 3 days ago. Let me see if I can get back to it. I didn't, the last paragraph on page 11 kind of didn't make sense to me. Something seems wacky about the way this is worded. I'll read it to you. The Vermont Agency of Natural Resources mapped and prioritized Rockingham's forest blocks. The highest quality forests and natural habitats are south of 103, north of 121, and west of Rockingham Hill Road. These lands are sometimes zoned appropriately, but some areas have 1 acre zoning districts. That is the precise zoning density necessary to fragment forests and reduce habitat quality. A Connecticut by design that would allow for subdivisions of 1 acre building lots is contrary to the rural by design model needed. So what you're saying is you want to get rid of this 1 acre lot thing? Is that what that says?
Yeah, habitat fragmentation occurs when you subdivide the land. That's language that's been in there for quite a bit of time. But yes, it may be antithetical to trying to conserve large tracts of land. If something like that paragraph, you know, we could improve that, but the intent is still there, and it reads the way we want it to read. Maybe we could restructure the writing.
There's a perfect example of that at the end of Ashton Road, where for some unknown reason, there's a bunch of 1 acre zoning, a big, 40, 50, 60 acre piece. That why, you mentioned some guy back years ago said, I don't want zoning, and the town said, okay, and is that how it worked?
Well, that I don't remember particularly, but there is that issue where somebody doesn't want their development rights curtailed, and 1 acre zoning is what it is. And zoning first started out, sometimes these concessions were made. But in that case, we have had other communities nearby us realize that they have a 20 lot subdivision at the end of a rural road, and that's not in the community's interest.
Okay, so the thrust of this is don't have 1 acre
Yeah,
lots.
Yeah.
unless you need development. You want density, you're gonna get density.
All right, I just didn't quite,
And if it's confusing to you, then that means we do probably need to do some wordsmithing.
yeah, work on the wording with this, because it's just.
I'm making it right now.
It is, to Peter Golick's comment, it is wordy. Each month, we seem to be able to cut down the language, and there really doesn't seem to be an end to it. You can always find areas to trim and improve.
There is one section too, there's some wording that doesn't make a lot of sense. The sentence starts off, but then it ends, leaves you wondering what your intent with the sentence.
Was it the beginning of the
I'll make a
sentence
note of it
and
when I
the
go in
end?
there and send you a note. But all this town plan also reflects into your zoning, is that correct? Is that, means you're gonna change zoning?
We can't change zoning at all until we have a town plan that either allows it. We don't have to change the zoning, but we wouldn't be able to do any adjustments unless it's first, mentioned, supported in the town plan.
Yeah, I agree on that, but it could have reflect
It will have an
on,
effect on zoning once it's completed.
That's right.
especially like mixed use and stuff like that. I mean, if it says you're gonna go to mixed use in the town plan, then it's gonna affect zoning. Correct?
Well, I think one
We
of the ways
can't.
maybe we could address that, and this is something I
I
want
mean,
to,
you take Atkinson Street and Green Street, Rockingham, and whatever you've got in there, I know that you say mixed use on there.
Mhm.
I think that's gonna ruin the whole neighborhood, but that's my opinion. I mean, you got some mixed use now, but where some of it down the other end of town, the road's so narrow down there, I don't know how you can anything down there. Rockingham Street's fine, it's wide enough up there, but it's mostly residential. The only commercial you got up there is what used to be, the roofing company, Jansel's. That's not on Rockingham Street, that's on the side street.
Yes. Elijah spoke to me about this, and I think there's room for improvement there.
Thanks, though. Why don't you talk anymore?
Well,
You guys are in trouble now.
I share the concern.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of it doesn't make sense to me, but anyway,
I think there's opportunity there to refine it to maybe allow certain types of business development, but I think that it should be really low key. I don't want to
Like
see,
in-home
yeah.
Yeah.
businesses, that sort of thing.
I don't wanna
That's the direction
see-
I'd be headed.
like if someone wants to build a supermarket on Atkinson Street or a dollar store or something like that, that's a larger retail establishment with a large parking lot, or a drive-through restaurant or something. I don't want to see that kind of development spreading into these areas that are mostly residential. I really prefer to keep that type of retail business in the areas that are more commercial already.
Or wholly commercial,
Yeah,
right, as opposed to mixing it into residential.
yeah.
Jim, can you remind me how we're approaching parking requirements for rental units? Because I know that in the planning world, there's a lot of discussion about whether that's a pro or a con.
So the town plan, this kind of builds off of Peter's questions. The town plan provides some language to allow parking to be revisited in the zoning bylaws. Flexibility in parking, right now, we treat parking static. If you're in Bartonsville, same amount of spaces are required than if you're right next to the transit line in Bells Falls. We're attempting to allow additional consideration for multimodal environments, that you don't need the same degree of parking. So, and yes, these minimum parking standards our parking standards date back to the 80s. We've changed our thinking a lot since then.
The Bells Falls garage project, their parking will be in the town lots. Is that the plan when they got the permit?
There had been some changes to parking standards in the bylaws maybe 5 years ago that allowed for flexibility. So development you don't have to create another Walgreens. You can create what they did and then use the spaces from the municipal lot to count for your parking, to meet your parking standards. So flexibility and design. Ultimately, those are conditional use reviews, which means the DRB will deliberate for hours on, does that meet the, conditions? So it's not a freebie, it's not a gimme, but it allows the DRB some flexibility.
But people just stay on School Street, you have a two-family house. How many parking places can you have per apartment, or do you need to provide any at all?
One space per unit.
They can be stacked in the driveway?
Well, when the on-street parking, maybe off-street parking.
Off-street parking, it would have to, we have seen, also to Peter's point, creative uses of front lawns. Well, we believe the front lawn has a use as it is, and we don't need, inviting spaces for cars, we need inviting spaces for people. So they need to create legitimate parking spaces that show that you can enter and exit in an efficient manner.
Okay.
And most of them don't meet that standard.
And how would, what Peter saw, what would the enforcement action be?
Right now, we don't. If we had a site plan on that, the person that's choosing to use their front yard for parking, we don't really have a mechanism for the, you can't just tell them get off your front lawn. We can control access to the parcel. We can, if we had a site plan, we could say you're in violation of what we agreed to. But pre-existing uses is a little bit more difficult.
So you mentioned flexibility with parking spaces, but what's that gonna do to your green space? I mean, if you're just gonna look at put a paid parking lot, you're looking at water, runoff and things like that, whereas
Deb's alluded to these chapters we thought were finished and not finished because we make one tweak here and we realize, we just altered this. And I think you're providing a great example of that. There's a lot of focus right now on stormwater control, greenscaping, trying to, get those lawns out there. And hopefully that counteracts the parking minimums, that we see a balance there. Because if you do change this one thing, you're at risk for other issues that you pointed out.
Okay.
Couple things, Chuck, that maybe would help, because the board has spent a lot of time with like the local hazard mitigation plan. We're working on the area-wide plan for the island, and also a stormwater plan as well. And while their pieces are addressed in pieces of the plan, it would be nice to maybe even just include those as an annex in the larger document, since there's a lot of work that is going into those and will continue. And I think a lot of those issues overlap some of the conversations we're having right now. So I think it all sort of fits together. And it just might help us as we're going forward, trying to decide how we want to tackle some of these larger questions. So I think it would be useful to have that information.
Thank you.
On page 29, you go through recommendations and down these bullet points, it says amend the zoning bylaws to, and the last item is allow short-term rentals in all residential zoning districts. You talking about Airbnbs here?
Oh, goodness. So you're going to try to, I have to try to summarize a conversation that took probably an hour.
Yeah.
And tell people, so good luck to me. I will tell you that working families have used this to augment their rental income. I will tell you that people are concerned about losing the little housing stock we have to tourism. Is that what our interest is? There's a lot of conflict there. You want to allow this to happen in a certain context, but there's only so much control you have. So they did take a hard look at that elephant. And right now, this is a great example. Our plan, our zoning, doesn't even acknowledge that this industry exists. So we're going to have to get in there as ugly as it's going to get, because once you say one thing, then you haven't said the other 5 things. And that's its own issue. But right now, we're doing everyone a disservice by pretending like this sector doesn't exist, when anybody can go online and see the multitude of places you can stay at in the town of Rockingham. So it had to be brought up. Deb, you saw other issues to this too.
So there are concerns, and the state's still not done with it. And that's another problem. We're working on something that's flexing right now, and the state is trying to get some handle on it, some kind of control, and those complaints, you've seen the articles, I'm sure, about the fact that it might be a threat to housing stock, to making sure that there's available apartments for people who need them, when someone could turn it into a regular apartment as opposed to this weekend, but not this weekend, that kind of thing. So it is something, again, Chuck's right, we haven't addressed it, we have nothing in our zoning to address it, and we do need to look at it and just make some kind of competent decision. That input can come from you. You
Yeah,
guys,
I'm aware of all these sides.
Yeah.
It's very challenging to promote the town as a destination when there's no place to spend the night.
Yeah, you're right
It
there.
really falls kind of flat there,
Yes.
you have to go up to Springfield to get a motel room. But, just to blanket say, all residential zoning districts, you can do this, seems, that gives me pause, because why in the world would you want to mess with, a lease and, problems evicting people if that comes up and all that, and that for like $1,000 a month when you can rent it out by the night for $100. It's difficult. I don't know that it's a good idea to make a blanket okay here. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're gonna
But you
do.
can think of some other ways to address the situation, because we need to give it some,
Yeah, you have to
solidity. We
recognize
just
it.
need to figure out what's all or nothing, or is there some halfway point? Most people aren't going to, some of the apartments, people wouldn't do that, or have houses that wouldn't want to do that, or concerned about neighbors, having a temporary resident there for a weekend. How much have you vetted them? Are you sure everything's gonna be cool? But we have to address it somehow. Perhaps you can come up with some creative language that would make it more understandable, and not say, okay, the whole place is open for, B&B and no one has any apartments.
Some of the communities, San Francisco and other places that have been besieged by Airbnbs, have required that they be owner occupied.
Mhm.
So if you're on site, you can run an Airbnb. If you're not on site, then that way you limit the number of rentable apartments that would otherwise be sucked up by Airbnb, but you don't prohibit people from getting a little bit of extra income. And also you provide housing accommodations for tourists, which is something we really need.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. That's what a lot of places have done. Then, in terms of neighborhood, cohesion and stuff, the owner's right in there. They're not gonna bring somebody in that they think is questionable when they're in the house with them.
We have to live with them.
And things are not gonna go on with the owner in the house there the whole time these people are staying there. It's a lot different than that somebody's got 3 apartments and they're all 3, and they live in Brattleboro, and they're all 3 Airbnbs. So I guess, just like Rick's suggesting, I think you need some kind of qualifier here. And tonight, this is for you guys to
Oh, yeah.
work out in your
The notes he's
commission.
taking will be things we'll be addressing. We have a meeting coming up on the 5th. It's a Zoom meeting, so we can address the ARPA stuff, start looking at that and see how we want to fit it in there, and how we want to change the language. Or at least add additional strengthening language, hopefully not to make it more wordy. And then we have another meeting, what's the 28th or 29th?
Yeah, later this month, fourth
Later this
Thursday of the
month.
month.
Less later this month, so we'll have that too. So we'll have chances to do that. And that's a good, that's a great idea of having owner occupied. But the reality is, when I think about it, it's the same as having an apartment building with 3 or 4 apartments and an absentee landlord. The landlord lives in Brattleboro, you have an apartment building, you've rented to all these people, your neighbors have to, in that house, your neighbors, you own the house, have to deal with perhaps not the best neighbors, in occupying it. So those are the same kind of issues, whether it's a weekend or it's ongoing. We still have to find a good way to address it. Absentee landlords are not what we want. We prefer owner occupied housing, because it's more stable, and your neighborhood is not disrupted by other people coming in.
Yeah, I don't think it's exactly comparable though, because an absentee landlord, they're probably gonna have at least a 1-month lease with these people. They're not gonna let somebody in that they anticipate not being able to evict if it seems necessary, and so forth and so on. There's a little bit more force on that absentee landlord to really vet the people that they're gonna have in their building.
Right.
Whereas, if you're not even messing with it, and they just sign up online to Airbnb,
You never see them.
you might not ever even see them, here's the condo, there's a little.
Keys
lock
under
on
the
it.
mat, yeah.
Yeah, so, I'm just saying, it's not necessarily
It's
comparable.
not identical, but there are some similarities.
The good news is we haven't had a problem to date, and we're doing absolutely nothing right now. So even if we do something, I don't know if we'll change that dynamic. It seems to be going okay. I've never had a complaint. God knows we have rental housing complaints. Short-term rentals, I haven't fielded a complaint yet.
Well, could we institute a registry of short-term rentals, or is that something for you to suggest, or for this board to?
The state's trying to do that now, aren't they?
Something, yes, to try and get them registered.
We
But,
do
is that-
monitor, we do go online, or not we, and so, but it's very dynamic. These things are coming up and then they disappear and they come up. So it's,
Well, I mean, could the plan suggest a registry?
yes.
Chuck, I know we haven't seen it here as much, but I know in other places in New England, a lot of historic churches especially have closed and have been rehabilitated or turned into condos or
Yep.
rentals or not. I would not wish that upon us, but we certainly have to be aware that that's a real trend in real estate. And certainly churches are not, thriving in a lot of cases. They have expensive, older, in a lot of cases, historic properties that they're trying to maintain. So I'm thinking at some point we probably have to at least acknowledge that and try to make some effort to think how that would fit, because that exacerbates all of our previous stress points, parking and institutions and streetscapes and historic preservation.
It comes up as positional use too, if someone wanted to purchase that property and turn it into a rental, as opposed to, or.
Right.
In Saxon's River, the McClartys bought, what's St. Edward's Church, and they've done that over the past, year, 2 years.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of adaptive reuse. And we just treat it like a single family home at this point. But they did have to apply for zoning permit, access, a few other things.
It's turning out beautifully, and they're a great addition to the village.
That's good.
Okay, anyone else have anything?
No, I just have comments that I'll send in, minor things.
That'd be great.
I made lots of comments, like talked to Chuck earlier today for about an hour. Stuff.
So I guess maybe process-wise, Chuck, do we just have a broad idea of, I know that it's going back through planning commission and updating, and is there another public process with this board before it goes for public hearing?
I would like another public process. We are making the pace we make, going at the speed we go, and then all of a sudden we have a short-term rental conversation, and then an hour goes by. So we go as fast as we can go. But the expectation is in the next couple of months, we're going to be ready for our own public hearings and turn it over to the select board for your public hearings.
Okay.
And in the meanwhile, we're going to be interacting a lot more. Hopefully have one informal discussion, one more like this before the public hearing phase.
Perhaps in June, go to your second meeting from there.
Yeah, the summer gets a little rough because we're down to the one meeting a month.
That's true.
People aren't really paying attention, so I'm thinking
Yeah.
sometime after Labor Day is probably more, appropriate, just because more people are around and involved.
One more comment. When I was on the board, and we were discussing housing, the folks on the board at that time talked a good bit about condominium conversions. And I don't see any of that,
Any of that language in there now?
yeah, right. I mean, those of us, we were pretty much, I don't think it was unanimous, but there was a strong feeling that the plan needs to address that. Condominium conversion could be important, particularly for the villages. Give people an opportunity to own their home instead of renting. And that a home isn't necessarily a single-family house. So that got washed out?
It looks like it did, whoever handles the housing chapter, whichever one of them.
There was more of a, I need to be able to show you that. It got presented like owner occupied. I think at one point, the condoization comment wasn't so much they were interested in condos, as that we push owner occupied. But let me review that. You catch me flat-footed.
Well, you could go back and look at our minutes, I guess, a couple.
Well, no,
years
that's
ago.
why I can just look back at the previous iterations and say, okay, this is what it turned out to be. This is acceptable, or Bonnie, good catch. This is what it turned out to be, and it's not getting to that goal that you mentioned.
Okay, well, I mean, at that time, I think it was Nathan writing that chapter.
Right, he's gone, who took
And
over
he's no
the
longer
housing
there.
chapter.
Yeah,
And when I left, we hadn't concluded it. We were still in a draft mode on it. But there was some paragraphs there, and I remember in our discussions, we were in general agreement.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually how it got went from being in there to leaving.
Okay, I just wanna see what happened to it.
I can show you that, yeah, no, I'll get that.
And one last item, the pedestrian bicycle. Thanks, you updated to note our new committee. And we have to appoint a 5th member of that committee. But are there any specific ways that we can encourage construction or even lane painting for PedX? Particularly, and when the Violet's Bridge is rebuilt, I know there's plans of that, the Cheshire Rail Trail coming up, crossing there, bringing bicyclists right into the square, which would be wonderful.
Okay, I'll look that up.
So I think and just what do other municipalities do to encourage bike and?
Well, there is an ordinance about riding your bicycle in the square, in the village right now, which is why you don't see shared roads going down to Rockingham Street
Oh.
in the square. So you might consider looking at that.
Mhm.
That's why they're on Atkinson Street. I
Yeah.
don't know if they need to be repainted, but the shared roads that we put in a few
Yeah.
years ago.
Mhm.
But there is that consideration, so if they're gonna come across the Violet's Bridge, that's gonna have an impact on the downtown traffic. So it is definitely worth considering what you can and can't do with a bike in the square, or we need to consider the ordinance.
And to your point, when I was doing V-Trans projects, your NEPA evaluation must include compliance with the town plan. So if the town plan requested this, that would be incorporated in the design, if practical.
Right, and the new bridge that'll be built parallel to the rail trestle, that's a way to bypass, that'd be a bike trail bypass of the square.
Good, you have to go over the alley.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's your, just go right by it. Good idea.
Okay, let's move along to item number 4, which is the VSP 2 program of submission for the Bridge Street Bridge, which evidently has not been submitted, but it will be after tonight.
I just want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for all the work you guys are doing.
Thanks for coming in.
It's really,
Thank you.
you're doing great work.
Couple meetings this month, see what we get.
There is a item in your packet for Wyndham Regional, requesting bridge submissions.
So I wanted to just sort of share some of the background here. So obviously, we've talked a lot about bridges at this table, and we'll continue to do so. And this is somewhat of a new initiative through Wyndham Regional, trying to help prioritize and sort of push some of our bridges into a more of an accelerated capital funding cycle. Bridge Street seemed to make sense as opposed to some of the other areas where they had highlighted other potential sites that might be in the program. Obviously, Depot we've already addressed. Violet's now, we're waiting for the New Hampshire approval of the 10-year plan, and as soon as that's completed, then that's in and fully funded for sort of a later 2028, I believe, is when the actual construction starts, based on the most recent updates for that, which I just stuck in the packet just as a reminder. Bridge Street is sort of the third piece of that puzzle, and if all things are, if the worlds align and everything comes together, potentially you could start with Depot, finish that project, move on if this is successful to a design and build for Bridge Street before the Violet's project starts in 2027-28. So this is sort of an opportunity for us to see if we can slot that third bridge into a logical sort of progression. With the idea then that, in the perfect world, if all three bridges are done and we had, the maximum amount of federal funding that was available, certainly from that standpoint, we'd be in good shape for a significant period of time. As time goes by, Peter is concerned about how much future costs might be associated with each of these rehab bridges. They're substantially aging and are not maintained properly to the point where when you are doing the rehabilitations and renovations on these bridges, it's going to be significant money. We saw the run-up in costs on just the Violets in a period of a decade or so. So the concern is the longer these bridges sit without action, the more expensive the repair, and ultimately it creates other issues as we go forward. So what this submission will do is request that we get a spot, one of the spots for potential funding for that specific bridge, and that we would try then, this will hopefully give us additional points as it goes through. There's a committee process and a screening process at the regional level, and with the idea that hopefully then some of these will get approval and funding as it gets into the full transportation plan, and ultimately then funded at the federal and state level. So this is really the first step in many, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to try to do something strategically and hopefully be able to fit it within a logical pattern of construction. So that was the thought behind this particular bridge and trying to put it through at this time.
I think it makes tremendous sense, but as I read the inspection reports, it doesn't look like it's so bad. I mean, starting in 2010, 2020. Is there a rating, an overall rating for the bridge on this report? I couldn't find it.
Well, I think if you look under the appraisal, the one area that's concerned is the structural evaluation. It was given a 2, which is a replacement needed, intolerable situation, replacement needed.
Pretty strong language.
Intolerable usually means not a great, it's not a great shape.
Okay. All right, it's built in 1927, so I guess it's time for us to think about replacing it.
Yeah, it's definitely in the range, and again, the longer these go, the more it just drives the cost consideration, and the rehabilitation becomes more difficult.
And the fact that it's over the canal, that adds an element of complexity to it, is that right?
It means that it's much like when we're dealing with our depot bridge. There's real costs associated with it.
Because the canal bed, as I understand it, was granite pieces that were laid down in 1900, 1920, something like that.
It's been a while.
So, and to get the construction equipment and the scaffolding, you have to be into that canal bank, right? Is that, remember last time you were talking about that, the Canal Street Bridge, and there was some difficulty about the position equipment, you had to touch that, the canal lining.
Possible.
Yeah. Anyway,
There's lots of ways to build bridges, and certainly now there's a lot of design build bridges where they have integrated, they're built off site and basically brought in pieces and swung into place with cranes. And you can do it if you build the abutments and you have room to work, but that's such a tight area in there. It's going to be a tough build. From an engineering standpoint, there's going to be a lot of challenges to get that job done.
And this doesn't have any particular historic significance, so they just place it with anything, correct? I don't think it does.
I don't believe it's listed. It's part of our designated downtown, so there might be some significance to that, just because it's a concrete structure.
A contributing structure
Right.
to the National Register District. It's not listed separately, but I think that's the same as the Vivo Street Bridge, actually.
But that had some conditions on historic aspect of it.
If it's a contributing structure to the National Register District, anything with federal funding would have some conditions attached to it. But I don't know its level of significance, really.
So do we need a motion? Do you need a motion from us, or are you just advising us of what?
Well, yeah, I prefer that we do a motion, and basically the idea would be that we would request that the Bridge Street Bridge be considered for the V-Trans capital program through this VPSP2 program, and we'll then forward it for their consideration.
Move what you just said.
Don't try to repeat it.
Forgot my tape recorder, sorry.
I'll second that.
A lot of acronyms involved in that, yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, let's move on to, one other thing. Do we have an update on the Bridge Street where we stand? You hear anything whether Depot Street, whether we're,
I spoke to the engineers about doing an update when they're closer to their 60% design. So I spoke to VHB probably sometime in June. They'll have another update session, and I'll be able to give you, maybe even do it at a meeting so they can give us just an update as to where they stand. So I had asked them to try to see if they could meet that, so they were working towards that. So I'll keep that in mind for a June meeting.
okay. All right, let's go to number 5 here. Discuss guidance for local cannabis commission.
So
There's a
last time I
packet.
gave you 80 sheets
Update
worth of
packet in
stuff.
here.
And as soon as that was done, the state put this updated information on their website, so I just wanted to pass this to you. Before we start on that, I did sign up for a webinar. And again, if any of the board wants to come, I'll do it up in the 3rd floor conference room. We'll do it, over the TV.
I'm just gonna go there on that, because I'm just gonna bring it up and see if
Right.
anybody else wanted to go to that.
So-
Because there is a cost involved in it.
Yeah, I'll sign this up, so we'll be there, and then anybody who
Yeah.
wants to come can come to the 3rd floor.
May 24th.
May 24th, it goes
At 10
from
in the
10 to
morning.
noon.
I'm gonna be out of town, coming back from,
So it's basically just a chance for the folks on the Cannabis Control Board to give their presentation to local officials about how they see things with their regulations, what their, some of the issues that they're seeing. They've already missed their May 1st deadline for accepting applications, so as we all anticipated, this is going to be a slow process to get it going.
New Jersey approved, legalized a year ago, and their shops opened last month. How did they do that? It's amazing how long this has taken.
Very considered in Vermont. We're taking a much different approach.
Do not rush into anything.
No. Lots to consider.
A lot of bureaucracy.
But anyway, so be that as it may, if anybody would like to come, we will have it. We'll put it on.
What day of the week is that?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday the
Oh, I think
24th.
too. Yeah, May.
Yeah, so it's basically,
Yeah.
3 weeks from tonight, roughly. Yeah, so during the day. So I've already signed up for it, and it's 10 to 12.
Yeah, it's like we're meeting that night.
And we do have a meeting later on that evening.
Was interesting to read there, or see where they are going to now have people apply, do a pre-application, and that, pre-application goes back to your local commission for approval before the state tackles it.
Oh,
So we may not have to come up, and you and I were discussing some sort of an application
right.
for our local commission, but
Right.
evidently we may not have to do that.
So we'll be taking a look at the application they filed with the state.
Right, they apply it to the state, and the state kicks it back to us, the local commission.
That simplifies it.
Yeah, so it makes it a little easier, so.
Yeah, that's good.
That way there, we don't have to worry about making a step in the wrong direction, and somebody calls us on that one.
Right.
So this is really just updated guidance since we last spoke. There's nothing really new in relationship to any particular action that we have to take. It's more for informational purposes, and I think probably the next logical thing for us to do is to sort of get the presentation from the state folks on the 24th, and then see what our next steps might be after that, so. It's gonna be,
Anybody have any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to financials. They're in your packet. Look at recycling, where our projected revenues have reached there a little higher. I guess some of the concern would be the equipment. Why do we have, I know in the under vehicles there, they got like $36,000 for parts and stuff. You never used to stock that much up there. We did at one point, then we put our foot down and said, you know,
A lot of that relates to the new registration system that we had to buy, the new, because we do our own inspections for municipal vehicles there. So we had to buy their program, their printer, so a lot of it relates to that. But there's also other pieces of that as well.
That $69,000 vehicle, was that a new pickup for Andy?
That's for the department. That's the one that we ordered last July.
Okay.
And it's a quad cab, and it was supposed to, in the winter we use it for plowing, and then in the summer, the brass crew and other crews use it.
All right.
So,
Do we retire a vehicle when we bought that one?
yeah, we have a trade-in. We got $2,000 for a trade for one of our older pickups. And then Andy will then take another truck until his pickup is ready, which we're back to the waiting game.
has one been ordered, Randy?
Yes,
So we're just,
we asked them to put it in order. We're just waiting to see what it's going to be in terms of timing. So,
Financial question, the Into the Woods just wrapped up. I was there one of the nights, it looked about half full. Do you have any initial reads on the revenues for that?
it sounded like it did okay. I think it's going to be positive, but I don't think it was a full house.
No.
But I think overall, my impression was that they were reasonably happy with how it went. So good. I think everybody walks away feeling pretty good.
Did they resolve the issue with hanging the equipment from the ceiling?
Well, we're going to have a pretty detailed presentation, either our May meeting or the first meeting in June, to talk about what our options are, because we're getting quotes for aluminum catwalk systems. You know, when you go to a stadium and different, you see these things up in the ceiling.
Yeah.
Those are much lighter, and then we can take the wood that's up there now, which is creating a lot of stress on those roof supports, and take those out. And then we're hoping then the engineer will say, okay, you de-stress the existing, we don't have to do that much additional shoring, and then we can put in the new, hang the new theatrical lighting without stressing the roof support system.
All right, and the pipes will be part of the whole lighting instruments, that would be part of the catwalk or attached to the catwalk?
No, that'll be attached to the steel beams, it'll be up higher inside of it. You won't see it, but that's where they'll attach to.
All right. And
Problem is that the loads that it's carrying now, it's already stressed, so that's why they recommended we take out, we have old wooden planking or something.
Someone in the waiting room.
So, and the goal then is to, Daniel, all right? And then the goal is to reduce that weight. Hopefully then we don't have to do as much structural reinforcement, which will be much cheaper, and then we can then finish the grant portion.
they access the catwalk from where?
Sort of, they have to go through somewhat of the same process when you go up to the clock. So you have to sort of get into some of the, it's not an easy area to work through.
Right.
So we're hoping that we're going to try to work with some of our folks to see if we can do the work and not have to hire contractors in terms of the catwalk material.
Yep.
The reinforcement work, for sure, we're going to hire a contractor to do that, whatever the recommendation is. And then obviously installation of the lighting.
So this is all equipment that's going to be installed over the stage area in the fly loft. It's not going to be in the auditorium.
Well, some of it will be visible in the auditorium because it has to obviously show down into the stage areas, and so it will be visible when it's all said and done. Right now, they build those when they come in for each show. You know, they end up putting together a structure and platforms, and it's
Big pipes rise against scaffolding, basically.
right.
Yeah.
So
That will alter the historic feel of that interior a little bit, though, won't it, to have a catwalk up there?
well, you won't see the catwalk because the catwalk will be above the plaster.
Oh, all
We're
right.
just trying to take stress off of the actual support areas.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Charlie, do you have some comments?
Not really. I just jumped in because it occurred to me I should probably be listening.
Okay,
Do you want to report on Into the Woods?
I'm totally unprepared to do so, but I'm happy to. They went over 1,400, 1,400 attended overall. I think the interaction between the Opera House and Wild Goose Players was very productive. Let's see. And the thing I'm really happy about right now, I just want to brag on the movies. Attendance has been coming back up. It's still depressed as to pre-COVID levels, but the on-screen advertising program is now bringing in between $1,300 and $1,400 a month, which is just terrific. We're just getting wonderful support from local merchants, and the Classic Film Wednesday sponsorships are fully subscribed by local businesses. We're just getting great support from the community.
That is good news.
thanks, Charlie.
Thank you all.
Do we have any questions for Charlie? I guess we'll let you off the hook, Charlie.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, that being said, let's go to review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. We'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve orders, bills, and warrants.
Second.
A second.
Motion made to review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. Any questions? Suggestions? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor would say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And they're coming around on the warrants. There are 3 in there, and we don't need to sign the 3rd one. It's for village. Okay, agenda items for the May 17th, 2022 meeting. Do we have anything?
I understand that the BF Trades folks, like Stack and others, would like a chance to present their ideas again for 66 Atkinson Street. Or that's the 17th or a week.
That's the 17th, yeah, that Tuesday.
And would that be a good time, or do you want to give them more time to prepare?
It's up to the board, it certainly works. Right now, we don't have a crowded agenda. June, we're gonna.
Better than early June.
Yeah.
I will be out of town at that point, but I'm going to try to zoom in from Europe.
Okay.
Okay.
At some point, I would like to talk about the downtown street lamps too, and coming up with some kind of a maintenance plan for those over the next couple of years or so.
Okay.
Just because we have so many outages.
Okay. Anything else? If you see anything coming up, just got a buzz and we'll see if we can get it on there.
There was some correspondence from Bonnie Reed, was a member of the pedestrian bike committee, that they want to have a 5th member before they meet. Is that they don't have to have a.
They don't have to wait for that. They can go ahead and do the meeting, and somebody can jump in when they get them.
Yeah, so
Yeah, there's no reason for them to hold up or get 5.
do you want me to let them know that, or do you want to let them
No,
know?
you can do that. Stan's right there, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Stan, you hear that? You don't have to wait to get the 5th person for that bike committee. We saw the email from Bonnie going out waiting to. So you can move ahead with the meeting if you want.
Okay, I'll touch base with that.
All right, if you'll pass that word down and get that started, then you can go ahead, just set up with Scott if you're gonna use this office area, the town hall for a meeting, so we can get a slot for you somewhere.
Okay.
All right, review agenda items for the joint board meeting. We know we're gonna have ARPA on there.
Yep, we'll have an update on our tax sale. We'll definitely have ARPA.
Everybody get that thing from Gary on Camoin? there's a,
No, I did,
in the computer email, it was
Came
out
this
there.
afternoon, I believe, kind of later.
oh, okay.
Yeah, summarizing, and it's interesting to look at the results, they give you the head counts on the stickers,
Oh, yeah.
interesting.
Boiler win.
I was surprised that some of them, there were quite a few zeros in there for some of the projects that, no interest whatsoever to pursue them. And the community center was only Bell Falls, somebody else, very few votes for the community youth center thing. Very few votes except for Bell Falls. They had like 60 and everybody else had maybe 4 or 5, which was a real turnaround from the first meeting that everybody was on the bandwagon to push that project, but it's interesting to look at if you get to screw it down through there, yeah.
We'll also,
To request for any comments if you have anything in there.
When did he send it out?
On the joint board meeting, they're gonna,
I think the Cremorne thing came out like 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon. It
Oh,
was
okay.
fairly later this afternoon, so if you hadn't had a chance to catch up on email, you might have missed it.
No, I haven't.
I don't see it here. Maybe. That's all this like.
I thought it did. I'll double check. If not, I'll send it back to everybody.
maybe you just send it to the representatives that were there, so.
I don't know if it was just to the executive group or if it went to everybody.
Just, it might have been just the planning committee, I don't know.
You don't have it, Aaron?
You don't have
I
it?
can forward it to you if you want.
All right, so Elijah didn't get it. I wouldn't see.
I don't have to check it out yet.
Okay. We'll also have an update, Peter, on the fire equipment committee MOU that we had talked about.
Hear from them?
We're going to try to have a meeting. We now have new members from all 3 communities, elected officials, as well as the fire chiefs and myself. So I'm going to work on that and try to have something for the discussion at that meeting as well.
Because there's a committee meeting the same night to have a BCA meeting at 5:15. I informed Sean of that, and it's for the village meeting, so I don't know why anybody from town would have to go to that, but I imagine the trustees are the BCA for the village, so. But okay, other business, Elijah, you wanted to talk about the tower.
Yep. So, as I mentioned last week, I've had lots of opinions expressed to me from residents about the new lighting system. Lots of strong opinions about the colors. So I thought that it would be worthwhile just deciding what kind of parameters we want to set to have some logical way to control that.
I think someone's gonna have to write up some sort of a short policy as to that. So we have something to go by. I mean, what are you gonna do it on? Because if you could have a multitude of colors, I mean, Black Lives Matter could say, we want black, and you can't see anything. So, I mean, this is gonna get real interesting. I don't know how much comment was positive, negative, or in between, or all over the board.
All over the board, lots of negative, honestly, but
Negative in that they don't want any colors other than black and white.
there's lots of people that would like to not see any colors for sure, or people that would like to see them just on special occasions. I would suggest that it's not like we're going to do away with them. I think that it's a nice novelty, but it is a novelty. We don't want it all the time. It is a historic landmark, and it seems to be very distracting. They would always have some new color, so I don't know.
Well, as I say, just looking at the controversy got going on at the high school with the Black Lives Matter flag, and now they're looking at a policy right now to decide, because, they could have, the whole flagpole could be adorned with everybody else's flag that wants one up there.
Yep.
So, the same with the lights, you'd be all over the field with that thing, so.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's just easier, just designate it to really can't, though, if we're doing that inclusion thing, we can't really, can't exclude anybody.
I mean, they could somehow have, they have to have somebody to go to have approval, there has to be some kind of condition. You know, like, because you could have it, like you said, for every single, you know, today's Orange Day for this
Yeah.
cause or whatever, but, if there's a policy in place and you have certain things that you, like, you would have it graduation day purple or graduation week is purple, or when a team wins, it's purple, and that's allowed, but not in the policy to lay out
Yeah,
certain
no,
things
but
that are
you need a
okay,
policy
and then you don't have to
before
go for extra permission, but if you want to approach the select board for a very, good reason to change the color, you need to do that. I mean, if you branch as a community child who has cancer, and you wanna have a special day for that child, that would be acceptable to me, but just some kind of policy in place, I mean, why do you wanna draft it?
There you go.
Would you be the color meister?
I could see what I.
We already gave that job last meeting.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to get on there.
Well, I don't really have any authority to say anything one way or the other unless we have some kind of policy that we.
Right.
Yeah, I think we need to go forward with some sort of a policy, somebody can write one up, or,
I think it might be safest just to say that for townwide issues only, you know, like team graduation day, the team won the state championship, not for political causes, and not for individuals, just to, you know, avoid.
I mean, it's a little bit limited what you can do with it. I mean, it's only one color, so.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's not like it's actually like a you know, a billboard where you have an image on it or something.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, it's 365 days, so it's not like it's gonna be every day gonna be a different color.
right.
You might have once every several weeks, it might change for one night.
Would an application, a simple like one-page application that would go into the town manager or whatever, and you would approve it or bring it to us if it's not a, if it doesn't fit the policy?
I don't know, if you start having applications, then you're opening up to, like, you know, right to life, or
Right.
abortion. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
where do you draw the line on these things?
Exactly.
If you just say no political statements, none, just none. You know, I mean,
We could just simply have a schedule that says
you could do that too.
we're just going to have it changing red, white, and blue for Independence Day. We're going to have it red over, you know, the Christmas holiday weekend, and we're going to make it purple when the team wins, something like
Right.
that.
I think that would be the safest thing and avoid all this
Controversy. Yeah.
Okay.
But you're the master. You tell us.
You could, it's not hard to write up a policy, so you just want to write up a simple policy, and then we can look at it and
Yeah, I'll do that,
massage it
and
or
then just
whatever.
let you guys
At
decide
one of our
what you want to
meetings,
do.
and then go from there. I think that's easy.
That's a good approach.
And I'm sure there's
Sounds
other
good.
policies that exist that you could find from other towns that has a similar power.
Bonnie, you have anything?
So,
Rick?
No.
Okay, you got the clock tower. Want to remind people, taxes are due on the 10th, that's next week. 8% penalty kicks in if you don't make it, so be advised. Bump outs, I talked to Alan Fowler, he appreciated the bump outs, but he mentioned the one that the Flatiron building is in dire need of help. Bricks, a lot of bricks are missing. Have we considered doing like stamped concrete like they did at the Fireman's Memorial that may hold up better than the bricks?
If we're changing materials, that would be my preference. Those
Yeah, I don't know.
ornamental
I mean-
bricks are lovely, but they're a nightmare.
I'm not in favor of that.
So
I say brick. Period.
was the one in the Flatiron redone, or no?
No, it's
Yeah, I
just
know
been,
It's been several
But
years.
these ones
since-
have held up, the ones that. were-
yeah, these two, yeah, that's when Buffum and Bruce were doing them. And, so I know up by Walgreens and Shell Station, there's bricks missing on that one too.
But see, that one was redone with the concrete pavers, which are really not a very good material. They're cheaper than clay bricks, but they only hold up for a few years and start to crumble. But I really think that we should stick with the real clay bricks. I think that it really affects the aesthetics
I agree.
a lot. I think that the stamped concrete is
I
just,
know the one down the
just
post
doesn't
office,
cut
I
it.
think, but I'm not sure, that one almost looks like it was, the concrete, on there, because it's heaved, and you can see it's broken off from one section.
that is the stamped concrete,
I don't know
yeah.
if it was stamped
And I
concrete there, or
don't
whether,
think that it looks very good.
so, but, so. Now, I know Vermont Trans had, a bike ped program. They're looking for people to sign up. It's interesting when you read it, though. It's a little small program is a 50-50 match up to $150,000. So they'll kick in 75, but the locals have to do 75 also. The large one, which doesn't make any sense to me, maybe they got their fingers crossed, but that one, they say you can get up to $40,000, and it's a 20% match. Doesn't make sense to me, but.
Now, did Peter Bergstrom apply for the one out by the Village Park there? One that goes out to the old Timco building,
Yeah.
Historical Society.
Oh, that walk out there?
Yeah, I think Gary applied for that. They didn't get it the first time, did they?
Oh, I don't know.
It was $110,000.
Gary's gone, so.
We reapplied.
You reapplied.
In the water, surface water thing that's on the website, that survey, is anybody supposed to fill that out, or just someone from the town, or?
We're reaching out to some groups and organizations to try to get people.
I didn't know if it was open to anybody, so you
Anybody.
just go on there and you
Nope,
can
anybody.
fill it out. It's pretty simple.
Right.
But they just ask for, what connection you are with the community, whether you're a resident, official, or whatever.
Right.
Okay, I didn't know if maybe somebody from the town was designated to go ahead and fill it out, otherwise I'd just look at it. All right. I guess that's all I got. Right.
The sort of morale with the highway department, is it good in terms of, like, you had mentioned that you might have to increase compensation slightly to keep up with inflation, or how's it? I know we have a contract in place, but at one point you mentioned that you might be thinking of adding something there. Is that something worth?
Well, the challenge is everybody is giving recruitment bonuses, especially for people who have CDLs.
Okay, so they're already getting bumps.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
We had one person transfer to a state DOT job because they got a fairly substantial increase in pay and a recruitment bonus. So unfortunately, it's going to be the way that the workforce is going to be for a while. All of the construction companies are begging for workers and drivers with CDLs, and they can't find enough staff. So this is going to be a challenging environment and try to hang on to people.
Good. Well, I think from what I've talked to those guys, the morale seems very high, and
I've been trying to make sure that, we want to do some upgrades to the facilities because they need the garages themselves need a little bit of upgrading, which might help. Simple stuff like the putting heat pumps in to help because they're cold in the wintertime when they're working, and a few other items. So we had Efficiency Vermont up there. We were looking at some options. So we're trying to do some things. They are appreciative of the board's commitment to updating their trucks and their equipment because they take a lot of pride in the job they do, and it's tough when your vehicles are, substandard or really breaking down a lot. So the replacement program that's been ongoing and the board has funded has been very helpful. I think that's helped a lot of people just happier on the job. So
it's great to hear.
Yeah.
Remind me, you were going to have a part-time assistant in your office. Was that something that was being contemplated?
Well, right now we have the HR person who's working part-time. We also have Betsy works part-time helping out with Gary and some of the stuff for our grants.
Good.
And then we do have the new person in clerk's office as well. So we're going to sort of see how that works out before we go forward
Okay.
with any other staffing changes.
If you personally have the assistance you need,
Yeah, I don't have any issues. So I'm at a point, I do most of my own correspondence. I don't, it's emails and some making my own stuff. So
yeah.
as long as I have other people to do the deadline specific stuff, that's really where the headaches are. Just trying to get all the grants and the submissions and the reimbursements and, it's just a constant flow of paperwork. We're getting, we're on, for the most part, pretty well on top of that at the moment, so I think that's okay.
Thanks for the great work you did.
Okay, regular meeting is over. I move that the board enter executive session to discuss negotiating, securing real estate purchase or lease options per Title I, VSA 313, parentheses A, parentheses 2. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We are in executive session.